Hello everybody, I'm Gwen Campbell-Mindes. Welcome to Gwen's Bookish Ramblings. So, last book of the Vows and Honors series, and this is definitively a book of short stories. Unlike, I've mentioned this before, obviously, because you can't talk about the other books in the series without talking about this one, because, as I said, the first story in this series is before the first novel. And then a couple stories in this book are from chapters in The Oathbound, and a few outtakes of this happen before Oathbreakers, and then you have Oathbreakers, and then this book picks up after Oathbreakers. So we're back to this one again, this time entirely solo. But we're just talking now about the last three stories in this book. And those three stories are Wings of Fire, Spring Plowing at Forst Reach, and Oathblood, the titular short story. So, Wings of Fire. Wings of Fire takes place after Kethry and her now husband Jadrek and, of course, Tarma have set up their school. They're settled in. Kethry's children are starting to learn how to be Shinna along with being raised by their parents. They've taken on students. They're settled. And what happens is that they get approached in Wings of Fire right at the start by finding a dead man, a dead Shinna shaman, or at least a dying shaman. And what happened is that he was friends with a Tayledras mage, and the mage had been taken captive by another sorceress who is not a blood mage, but she's just a very bad person. And she wants to use firebirds effectively as weapons. She's just, she's a bad person and she's doing bad things. And the thing about the firebirds is that they are basically birds that they fly around and they can set fire to stuff either if they so choose or if they are freaking out. And a character who appears later on actually has one as a familiar / bond bird. We don't learn quite as much about the Tayledras until we get to the Winds of Fate trilogy, which is still a ways off, because at that point we actually get first-person Tayledras for the whole book, or much of the book. But Tayledras have bond birds. That is, these are birds that are psychically linked, and they're kind of like magical familiars. And so there's a character who will show up at some point who has a firebird as a bond bird. But anyways, firebirds are very pretty and very dangerous if not handled correctly. They're not the kinds of animals that are innately vicious. I mean, they're not like birds of prey, which are just mean, or like, a lot of other animals which can be just mean. Palace cats. Palace cats are adorable. They look way grumpier than Grumpy Cat, and apparently they're just mean. But anyways, neither here nor there. They find out that this Tayledras is being held captive, and they go and they try to rescue him, and they get captured by the sorceress, and it takes them some effort. And at this point, Mercedes Lackey does something that I find a little, potentially a little problematic. I don't know. I'm not a gay man, so I don't know how problematic it really is. The thing about Mercedes Lackey is, you have to put these books in time context. That is, these are books that are 20 odd years old, up to 30 years old. And so you're dealing with books and stories and concepts that are, to an extent, somewhat revolutionary because she's very, very accepting of the gay community. And when she has a gay character, they're just a person. She doesn't tend to fling too much gay. I mean, there's a certain amount of, LGB, and I'm not going to say TQS whatever, because this is basically, the characters that are at issue are usually basically lesbian or gay, so it's not really a thing. But this idea of a gay man being perfectly balanced between masculine and feminine characteristics causes the sword need to feel that she can be handled by a man in spite of the fact that he's not a woman and her thing is women. I find that slightly problematic myself, but again, I'm not part of the community, and I'd hate to speak for what actually offends people. Anyways, so he winds up able to handle Need because he is, very, very effeminate, metrosexual, in touch with his inner woman. I don't know. Um, Internally balanced. Anyways, and by the end of it, they're able to get him out and stop her, and he's able to manage to transform her into a giant, terrifying spider, which, honestly, while the giant spider can't cast magic spells and take over the world, the idea of a gigantic spider is horrifying to me. So that's the first one, and it's basically just an adventure. It's they're, still hero types, and so sometimes they still go heroing. The next story that comes up is Spring Plowing at Forst Reach, and that's just a little humorous ditty. They're still teaching, and it's about to enter the off season, and they get word. Well, the story actually opens in Valdemar, because I mentioned this in the first video of the Tarma and Kethry Vows and Honor series. But if you go back to the Magic's Price trilogy, the last Herald Mage trilogy, you go to Magic's Promise, and in the course of that book, Vanyel's brother, Mikal, purchased a horse that he claimed, that he believed was Shinayan. He was wrong, but it got bred into the line of horses at Forst Reach, and the horses from that line are incredibly difficult to work with. They are so incredibly difficult to work with that they literally cause havoc and injury and sometimes death every single year around plowing time when they try to get these horses to work for them. Well, a Valdemaran bard, figures out, hears about the Shinayan ways with horses, and manages to get to Tarma and Kethry's school, effectively hoping to find somebody who can who can fix this problem for his friend, the Lord Ashkevron, and to basically make sure that those horses stop killing people and injuring people and maiming people every plowing season. And so this humorous little bit is just about Tarma and two of the people that she trained in handling horses going to Forst Reach and basically training these horses to understand that once a year they're going to get hitched to a plow, and there's nothing wrong with that horse, and would you just drag the thing along the ground and then, stop being trouble. And so it's fun and it's funny, and the horses, this former stallion, now gelding's bafflement as he gets bullied into submission by a couple of mares is very entertaining. And that's all it is. Oathblood, as we move on to the last book in the Vows and Honor trilogy, the last section of this is a novella. And this is set, it's a story about Kethry's oldest daughter and several of Tarma and Kethry's students. And there's a bit at the start of it. The first section of it is just establishing what the school is like, what happens at the school, how the students are picked, how the students get taught, what the students are taught. And the course of this, these two young noble women who are two girls, really, they're of a noble family, but they're both like 10 or 12. And Kethry's oldest daughter, they've become very, very close friends, and the Oathblood in this has to do with them swearing an oath to be as blood sisters, to come to help whenever any one of them asks the others, and so on and so forth. And when the two young noble girls get kidnapped, for political reasons, and because the person who kidnaps them apparently just hates foreigners, when they get kidnapped, the daughter insists on coming along because she tells her mother, well, when Tarma and Kethry tell her, no, you can't come along, you're not an adult, and she says, I swore this oath I have to, and they're forced to bring her along because an oath like that is serious. And don't forget, this is a world in which gods are real and intervene directly in the lives of people with shocking frequency. And because of that, you make an oath like that, you have to keep it, and that means they have to let her keep it. And at first they're concerned, and it's one of the things that comes up in this, is the concern that she was too young to make it and too young to understand what it really meant. But she comes with them, and she sticks with them, and she does what she has to do and doesn't cause trouble and suggests sensible things and stays quiet when she should, because she is not, in fact, a fully trained adult warrior. She is a girl in her very, very early teens. And so they manage to rescue the girls, who are able, thanks to Tarma and Kethry's training, to be sensible and to make sure that they, leave a trail for people to follow. And, and it's just a rescue and adventure piece. I think the bit at the end with Tarma and Kethry talking with the two girls, the kidnapped girls' parents, about how you have to let your children grow up and accept that sometimes they know things. It's a little gratuitous, a little bit unnecessary, but overall it's a very, very nice adventure to, close out this series. So to just take this last minute and a bit to talk about it, this isn't exactly a trilogy. It's an episodic sort of novel, and one proper novel, and a collection of short stories that also appear in the first novel. So I can't really call it a trilogy, but it kind of is. Anyhow, if you're going to read this, you really do have to read the first chapter of Oathblood, the first story of Oathblood, then read The Oathbound, then read everything but the last 3 stories of Oathblood, then read The Oathbreakers, then read Oathblood, then read, the end of Oathblood. My real suggestion is read the first story in Oathblood, read the next 2 books, and then read the rest of Oathblood, just to get sort of things stitched together in some kind of sensible order. And that's everything, so I will see you all next week.